Nowadays, we say that you don't need to be introduced to anyone because we have a very generous uncle called Google that before you meet anybody, you just ask Uncle Google to tell you who they are. But just in short, ladies and gentlemen, this is an accomplished scholar, an academic, a business leader, a thought leader, and also the chief knowledge officer of the World Free Zones organizations. And I'm now going to hand over to him and he will give us the keynote speech. You are welcome, my good doctor.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Saul Mulubi, for that excellent introduction. Very informative, very insightful, a lot of good points. I may also be echoing in my presentation. I have about 20 minutes to share my thoughts and experience. So good morning, a very warm welcome to all the participants. It's my pleasure to be here and share some of my thoughts and experiences. I represent the World Free Zones Organization. World Free Zone Organization is a not-for-profit association. Can the organizers request everyone to mute themselves, please? And also, I need access to share my slides. If you go to participants and make me a host, I will be able to share my presentation, please. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Yes, we can do.
Yes, I need to share my screen, share my slides while talking.
Yes, you are now the co-host, Doc.
Perfect, I got it. Thank you so much. Great. Can you confirm that my slide is visible, please?
Yes, it is, Doc.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciate. So as I said, it's a pleasure and honor to be here to share some of our thoughts, experiences with all of you. As Mr. Mulubi said, very much Africa as a continent will be the next frontier. Our research shows there are about 54 plus countries representing 15% of the world population, but at this point of time, probably doing less than 5% of the global trade, but has huge potential. I visited the region quite a few times. A few years ago, I was a keynote speaker in the United Nations conference in Nairobi, and I could see each time a lot of development. Investments are flowing in, and if we follow some of the basic rules, I think it could be the next frontier very soon. So I must congratulate all of you for doing an excellent job and then moving towards progress, economic development, and growth. From World Free Zone, we will try and contribute whatever possible from our end for the progress of the region. Now, World Free Zone Organization is a not-for-profit organization registered in Geneva and operational from Dubai. We started 6 years ago, and we have over 700 members in 135 plus countries. We have 10 regional offices, extremely active, all of them. We have what are called national contact points. These are celebrities who represent us as our extended arm when it comes to knowledge management. So we have truly a global presence. We primarily do three types of activities. One is knowledge management, where we conduct extensive research projects. We have published 3 books. We publish a quarterly bulletin. We have a weekly newsletter and a number of research-based reports with the view to disseminate knowledge amongst all the members of the world. We also focus on networking. So we have several platforms created, physical as well as virtual, for all the free zones to interact, learn from each other, benchmark, and do knowledge sharing. Thirdly, we have a number of value adding services that we provide to all our members. So we have knowledge, which includes research, which includes consultancy at both country, government level and free zone level, and even a number of training and capability development programs. In fact, at this point of time, I am conducting an online virtual leadership training for 30 CEOs across Middle East and Africa, and this is sponsored by Islamic Development Bank. The program is ongoing, and we are giving them inputs on how to be a good leader in adversity. So the title of the training is Leadership in Adversity. So as you see in our vision statement, the very purpose of our existence is to support free zones, and they become tool for economic prosperity and economic sustainable development. I'm going to start very briefly with a macro perspective on what kind of economic life cycle countries go through and what are its implications on free zone. And later on, move on to what are the challenges that free zones face today and how we have tools and techniques to overcome these challenges. And if in the continent, the free zones follow the tools and techniques that we provide, how you can contribute to an excellent economic progress and development. This in a nutshell is what I'm going to share with you. Now, in general, countries go through 4 phases in their economies. You have a resource-driven economy, where you try and get the basic factors of production: land, labor, capital. Once you have the basic factors of production in place, you move on to an investment-driven economy, where the focus is invest, build, grow, develop, and so on. Now, you can't keep on investing, building, and growing. You need to, at some point, shift your emphasis to innovation-driven economy. Yeah? The introduction speaker, Mr. Saul, also highlighted the importance of innovation. Now, just to give you an example, Dubai, which is part of United Arab Emirates, went through these phases and developed its free zones accordingly. The country, as United Arab Emirates, got formed in 1971, 50 years ago. The first 20 years were spent in getting resources in place. Almost 85% of the population are expatriates. So they brought people from outside. They developed the land within, and the focus was much more on resource-driven economy. At this stage, from a free zone perspective, you try and develop industrial parks where you do manufacturing, you try and do export processing, and so on. The next 20 years were focused on investment-driven economy: invest, build, grow. Now, this is where the country invested in infrastructure development and in legal and corporate governance framework development, constructing roads, bridges, telecommunications, the entire ecosystem to support free zone. Free zone is not a standalone entity. It needs support system. Now, at this stage, Dubai developed what are called special economic zones. Now, what do we mean by SEZ? We have, for example, a knowledge park where some of the best, most reputed universities have invested and established educational institutions. We have a healthcare city where some of the best healthcare providers from around the world have invested. We have internet city, media city. We have for metals and commodities, we have automobile zone, an airport free zone for low volume, high value products. So we started specializing into specific areas of zones in the investment driven economy. When we keep on investing, others also invest. How do we differentiate ourselves? So you need to move towards an innovation driven economy. Now, under this, we started focusing on what we call science parks, technology parks. High-tech free zones were getting developed. In fact, at this point of time, UAE has ambitious plans in space sciences, and there is a plan to even establish a free zone to address the space science and space technology. They also roped in the top universities into the free zone. So every university will be aligned and linked to the free zones. So this way you are able to grow. So at a very macro level, depending on what stage a country is in, we need to align our free zone initiatives appropriately into that national objectives and the national agenda. Of course, all of them can coexist. You can be innovation driven as well as investment driven and so on, but your emphasis will start shifting. Now, going forward, free zones are likely to face three major challenges. Let me take you through these and then tell you what kind of solutions we should address and what World Free Zone has in its bag to offer to the free zones in Africa, which will help them to address these challenges. One, there's a changing pattern of production network. Two is the new industrial revolution, digitalizing the economy. And three is the sustainable development imperative, which is United Nations has come up with 17 sustainable development goals. How building them into the system, into the ecosystem enables us to develop our economy. So the first one, changing patterns of production. The competitiveness scenario is changing. How? Typically, if you look at a supply chain, you have a supplier, a manufacturer, a dealer, a retailer, a consumer. In the past, for a manufacturer, other manufacturers are competitors. For a dealer, other dealers are competitors. But going forward, this chain is operating as one virtual entity, having strategic alliance between them, and the competition will become between one chain and another chain. Let me give you an example. A company like Unilever has a supplier in 3M and a retailer in Walmart. They have between them what is called inter-organizational information system. Because supply chain is about flow of three things: flow of material, which is logistics; flow of funds, the customer pays money, how much of it goes to each player in the chain; and flow of information. The entire success of the chain depends on flow of information. If the information flows smoothly, then you can compete with other chains strongly. So you may be the strongest manufacturer, but if your chain is weak, somebody else who is not as strong as you may have the competitive edge. There are new business models getting developed. Innovation is not only in product and process, also in the way we run business. What do we mean by network effect? It's a very interesting phenomenon. I want to share with you what is happening and what is in store for us in the future. Typically, when you do planning, you say, what are the materials required to produce my product? At second level, you look at the manufacturing resource, not only the raw materials, but people, machine, yeah, the space. And at the third level, we do enterprise-wide resource planning. Most parts of the world, including developed countries, have reached at this point. But the next step is supply chain wide planning. As I said, the example of Unilever, you need to plan for your product across the whole chain. And the future, probably 5 years, 10 years down the line, is a network of these chains. So what do we mean by network of chains? Let me give you an example. You go to a vending machine which gives a soft drink. There is a number mentioned. You dial your mobile, that number, and you get a soft drink. What happens here is $1 from your bank gets deducted and goes to the soft drink company. Well, the soft drink company has its own chain. Your bank has its own chain, and your mobile company, telecommunication, has its own chain. Now, all these are interconnected, and therefore, every gadget is able to speak to every other gadget. And this is the future. This is where we are moving towards the digitalization. This is where we are moving towards big data and Internet of Things. So technology adoption is therefore very, very important for success, to compete globally, and also to contribute to the country's economy. Some of the AI or robotics or driverless cars are the future, and they are not very far, and they will become global phenomenon very soon. So all continents need to gear themselves up to face this. The third challenge is the sustainable development imperative. As I said, United Nations has 17 sustainable development goals. It talks about you need to become environmental and eco-friendly. International Labor Organization has something called Decent Work Agenda. Within the organization, we need to give importance to the human rights. We need to give importance to the internal social responsibility. Energy and waste management are other areas. So you look at new competitiveness scenario, you look at digitalizing the economy, you look at sustainable growth, where not only economic development, but social and environmental protection should also be given due importance. And that's why we call it triple bottom line: economic, social, and environmental. What is the way forward? How do we face these challenges? At a macro level, there are three approaches. One, businesses need to do strategic reorientation. The remaining focus of my presentation is on how to reorient free zones. But free zones are not islands. They operate in an ecosystem. So you need government to do appropriate policy reforms to support that development. We can't be innovative as a company, and if the government does not make reform in its regulations, we will be stifled. And three, you need appropriate education systems. Universities, institutions of higher learning need to repackage their educational value. Progress, economic progress, happens only when all these three are comprehensively addressed. But our forum will focus on, as businesses, as businessmen, how could you strategically reorient yourself? This is where World Free Zone Organization has developed a tool. We call it as a Free Zone 4.0. It started with a research that I conducted 3 years ago. I called it Next Practices Beyond Best Practices. What it says is what is best today may not remain best tomorrow. Let us anticipate what is in store for us in future and proactively plan and prepare ourselves. In this process, I interviewed about 20 plus domain experts around the world, picked their brain, and with internal research, created a framework and said, in order to be future ready, in order to be free zone of the future, we need to address three major pillars. Under each pillar, there are three elements. Each element is a certification provided by World Free Zone. So what are the pillars? Sustainability, innovation, and being best in class. Under sustainability, we have eco-friendly free zone, where we have something called green free zone certification process. Just to give you an example, the green free zone has a questionnaire which we administer on a zone. It can be administered on any organization to find out where do you stand on a 100-point scale today. And then we have 7 criteria. Yeah? We look at green operations, green transportation, green construction, energy, water consumption, and so on. And on each one, there are questions, and we tell you where do you stand on a 100-point scale. And then provide inputs to improve the score. And we have a progressive certification scheme. If the company gets 30 out of 100, they get bronze certified. 50 is silver, 70 is gold, 85 is platinum, and so on. This is just an example of green zone. We have socially responsible zones. We have good place to work following the International Labor Organization's theme of decent work agenda. We have safe and secure zone under best in class. A safe zone certification follows the authorized economic operator principle of customs. We have a tech ready zone, which is how to become a smart zone, how to imbibe technology. And then you have innovative zone. There is a certification of how innovative you are currently and how can you build an innovative culture in the organization. SME developer, 70–80% of any free zone involves small and medium enterprises, and how to develop small, medium enterprise. Entrepreneurial focuses on establishing an incubation center. Knowledge-based, this is where we provide training and education. As I said, currently I'm running a leadership in adversity program for 30 plus CEOs across Middle East and Africa. We are also planning to launch a free zone MBA where you are taught the management concepts, but with free zone as a domain. On each one of these 9, we have certifications. So we measure a free zone on their economic contribution. If you see the bottom line, business excellence and economic contribution, then we provide the 9 certificate, again measure them, and we say this is how you become an effective driver of economy in your country and in your region. One wants to know more about these certifications, please feel free to write to us. I have a team which will respond to you. What are our recommendations for you to become a very effective, very successful driver of economy as a company or as a free zone? Initiate digitalization, become tech ready, become green, become eco-friendly, develop innovation techniques, foster, encourage innovation within your company, be socially responsible, not only external society, but even internally, the human rights, give them the right working environment, Continuously reskill and upskill employees because things are changing at a phenomenal pace. Formulate and implement a risk management strategy, enterprise-wide risk management. We strongly recommend this because there are always challenges. Currently, it's pandemic. Yeah, 7, 8 years ago, it was a financial crisis. If we have right risk management strategy, you will be prepared in a better fashion. Review your business processes continuously, become more dynamic, be more future ready. Yeah? There'll always be winners and losers, but winners look for opportunities in adverse circumstances, and losers look for excuses. And I am very confident through our research, we could see that Africa as a continent has a huge potential to become the future winner. You have adequate, more than adequate natural resources. You have adequate human resources. All we need is to put the ecosystem together, follow some of these certifications for companies and free zones. The government needs to reform its regulations, yeah? And the educational institutions need to reorient their value propositions. Yeah? We need to ensure the free zone design matches the country's development priority. I know very well that out of the 54 plus countries, there are some which are much more developed, some are still in the process, and some may be a bit underdeveloped. Depending on where the country is, you need to build free zones which is supporting, is aligned. And you need to have reliable infrastructure. You need to have innovative tools to attract investments, and some of these other points I have already mentioned to you. Foresee emerging trends. What are the customer expectations? I think in the earlier presentation, Mr. Molobi very rightly pointed out. Try and have a proactive service. What worked yesterday may not work today. What's working today may not work tomorrow. So anticipate, look beyond competition, yeah, and look at cooperation. The whole world is moving towards more cooperative mechanism. Very rightly, Mr. Molobi pointed out the intracontinental trade, yeah, which stands at 13–14%, has a huge potential to increase. If you look at EU, it's possibly 2 or 3 times more than that. So if there is a cooperative mechanism, I'm sure actions are being taken, and you need the right kind of legal framework, right kind of courts, judiciaries, which gives investors confidence that yes, if I invest in this region, it is safe. And this message is very, very important. In fact, just last week, I spoke in an international conference in China. I'm on the board of a couple of big Chinese free zones, and I was sharing similar thoughts with them. I said, you need a strong legal governance framework to make the RCEP or the Belt and Road Initiative of China make it happen. Partnership, collaboration, and cooperation is the way forward for the whole world to grow, yeah? And encourage innovation amongst people. Just to wind up my final thoughts, I want to share that recently we have published, like World Economic Forum publishes Economic Outlook. We publish something called World Free Zone Outlook. Yeah? Anyone who is interested in seeking a copy of this, please write to us. My email ID will be available, and my team will be happy to send you a copy. This gives an idea. This is a research which I did along with Kiel Institute for World Economy from Germany. And we have highlighted what are the major economic drivers happening, what kind of investment flows are taking place across the globe. And in the current pandemic, what is the way forward? What is the road to recovery? I have written the final chapter on this. This is published by my CEO and myself together, and we are happy to share this thought with you. With that, I conclude my presentation. I hope I was within the time frame allocated to me. I'm ready to take any questions, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Doc. That was an excellent intervention. And I'm just readmitting people who have been sitting in our reception area. Let me, Doc, introduce you to South Africa's Consul General to Dubai, His Excellency David Mahave is also online. And if you permit me, because as I indicated, this platform is all about networking. I will share his details with you, and then I will also share your details with him. Also, a very strategic stakeholder who has connected, who is of interest to you, is the Secretary General of the Indian Ocean Rim Association, because I know the UAE is also a member state of the Indian Ocean Rim Association. The Secretary General's name is Ambassador Dr. Nomvuo Nokwe. And I will also do the same with your details with her, and I'll also share with you her details. Ladies and gentlemen, I now open the floor for questions. You go into the participants, and then you raise your hand, and I will be able to acknowledge you. Or if you don't want to raise your question verbally, you are free to write in the chat box to your question, and the good doctor will be ready to respond to all your questions. Okay, the floor is open. Also, just for the doctor, whilst our colleagues are still going to write down their questions or to raise their hands, we have a number of special economic zones in South Africa, and some of them are your members. We have Kruger in the Eastern Cape. We have Dube Trade Port in another province called KwaZulu-Natal. We have Richards Bay, which is the coal terminal of South Africa. In the Western Cape, we have Saldanha Bay. And then in Gauteng, which is the economic capital of the entire continent, because it contributes 35% to the GDP of the country. But over and above that, if you look at the size of the GDP of Gauteng province, it makes it the 8th largest economy in the continent, meaning the GDP of Gauteng province is bigger than the economy of up to 48 African countries. So with it, although the country has decided that each province will have the maximum of 2 special economic zones, they have given permission to Gauteng to have as many special economic zones as possible. As a result, we already have one, the Gauteng Industrial Development Zone, next to our airport, the Johannesburg O.R. Tambo International Airport. But we also have other institutions that are evolving. The Automotive Industry Development Center, which is your member, is also evolving into becoming a special economic zone. We also have the Innovation Hub, which is also evolving into a special economic zone, specializing on high tech and and science projects. It will be driving the country's innovation, especially around renewable energy and ICT. And the biggest special economic zone in the country, it's in the process of being established in the northern part of the country. It is called Musina Makado Special Economic Zone. They've already attracted investments worth 15 billion US dollars. So it's going to be a very massive industrial development zone, and it's also strategically located right at the border of South Africa and Zimbabwe, meaning that it will be able to service the entire Southern African region. Let me see, on the comment chat box, anybody who wants to raise something, let me read there.
I could see a few questions. I can start answering them.
Okay, please do, Doc.
Sure. From Normat, can we have more details on free trade MBA? Certainly. Please write to us. We will send you a brochure. It is still getting developed. We are actually talking to a Spanish university, which is ranked #1 in Europe, to help us in developing this program. Originally, we thought we will have it in 3 locations in the world. One in North America, one in Spain, and one in Dubai. But now we have delayed the launch of this. There is a possibility it will be more online. And but as of now, it is put on hold. I'm so happy that some of you are showing interest in that. As soon as it gets activated again, once things become a little more normal, there is a distinct possibility we will run these modules online in second half of 2021, and we will keep you updated. I see another comment, Secretary General of Indian Ocean 22. Will we get it as a resource for one of our priority area, trade and develop? The region comprises of Middle East, okay. Are you seeing, can you, Mr. Molobi, little bit explain the question to me? Talks about 22 member states and 10 dialogue partners. The region comprises of 2.5 billion population from Africa right through Asia, Middle East, and Australasia. Will we get it as a resource? Okay, okay. Is the question that whatever I presented will be shared with you? Yes, I am happy to share if that is the question, if I have understood it rightly.
Beyond sharing the information with Dr. Nokwe, I'll be happy to one day to get a message that the 2 of you are having coffee somewhere in Dubai, because the UAE is a member state of the Indian Ocean Rim Association. And the same thing applies to our Consul General who is in Dubai with you, His Excellency David Mahabe.
Perfect, perfect. I didn't notice this. It'll be a pleasure to catch up.
And then there's a question there, Doc. There's a question from Kilebuhile Masemula. On the chat box is the last one.
Yeah, but I have one more. In your view, seeing what most African countries are resource-based, what have been the main impediments to growth? Is it regulatory? Let me share with you, I think a couple of years ago, I was a keynote speaker in a forum called African Legal Network, ALN. Very interesting. I learned also a lot from other speakers. And a lot of emphasis was given on how the entire ecosystem needs to get developed. Of course, legal framework has to become strong. intellectual property rights, infrastructural development needs to be done. It is happening already. Each time I visit, I could see it happening. 3 years ago, when I was in Nairobi, I could see that. Corporate governance mechanism also needs to possibly get more strengthened. And if we try and get the right kind of skill and educational inputs coupled with this, it would certainly. I mean, all countries have strengths and weaknesses. Impediments are not only specific to this continent, it is there all over the world. We need to identify them systematically through research and get over them. But yes, addressing, as you rightly say, John, the regulatory area would certainly take the region a long way. Are there any programs which specifically deal with development of young people? Yes, we have a lot of capability development programs where it's given at different levels. At this point, we are focusing more on the leadership. Mostly it is at CEO level, but we do more what we call tailor-made training programs. If an association or a zone or a group of companies request us, we study your needs and tailor make what we call bespoke training. You know, there in training, you have like a grocery store. I have 10, you take one by one. But I need to find out what is that you need. So we need to do a development need identification for the youth, depending on national priorities, depending on the goals and objectives of that region. So yes, if a request comes to us with a specific need, we are happy to provide that. Free economic zones talk about foreign investments. How have other countries who have implemented it ensured maximum benefits for residents of those countries instead of accruing mainly to foreign investors? Excellent question from Nicola. Just like Mr. Molobi said, I also keep one foot in academics. I teach in Australian University for the executive MBA. When this university came to UAE many years ago, I was part of their advisory board. And normally you go invest, you make money and take it back. But the main philosophy of the university was, what is it that I can do which will contribute to the economy of this country? So you try and develop, encourage investors to look at mutual benefit and growth perspective. A lot of countries, of course, have stipulations that you need to employ locally at least so many percentage of people. You need to generate at least so many jobs and employment and so on. These are routine, but we need to think innovatively of reaching a win-win situation. I must share here a very interesting, innovative example to you. Normally, free zones give investment to attract incentives to attract investment. Now, the incentives are usually partial or total exemption from tax, customs duty, provide space, and so on. But there is one high-tech free zone. It realized that 75–80% of companies investing in free zone are small and medium, 10, 15, 20 are large. It pooled resources from the large and established what is called an incubation center. An incubation center does hand-holding for young entrepreneurs, new business people. Now, these new business people invest, they get support on how to raise funding, how to do operations management, how to do budgeting, how to do project planning, and they become suppliers to the large companies. Now, this leads to a win-win situation for all the stakeholders. The large companies are happy because they have a supplier next door. The young entrepreneurs are happy because they have an incubation center to support them. The free zone authorities are happy because they are getting new companies in their fold. So the young local entrepreneurs are encouraged to use the incubation center and become suppliers to these large multinationals. And so all three parties are happy. Yeah. So this is just an example, Nicola, to tell you that there are innovative incentives and ways to make the local population benefit. There are a number of spillover effects. Whenever an investor comes in international business, there's always a domestic spillover where you use their services within. But their standards could be high. So it also enables the local service providers to enhance their standard, which is also an improvement in itself. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, our good doctor. That was an excellent intervention, and I believe we've all learned a great deal from you.